All right, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Amar with ZenMade.
All right, what are we going to talk about today?
We are going to talk about if everyone should create a company. Yes, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one.
I wanted you to go first. What do you think of it?
I can go first.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Okay, I think that there are lots of very, very good reasons to start a company. And I think that if you're clear on what those reasons are and what like the potential upside and like downside of like starting a company is, then I think that it's something that everyone should absolutely consider. Whether or not you decide that you actually want to do that is completely like up to you. I can definitely say that running a company is not for everyone, right?
Oh,
But it's
that's a
the
good
same
point.
way that just like, yeah, like, you know, just because not everyone is going to be able to dunk doesn't mean that everyone shouldn't try. I don't know. I didn't really have a better example
That's a
than that.
rubbish one, honestly.
So yeah, that's my high level opinion, enlightened opinion. I don't know.
No, that you make a fantastic point as to like running versus creating. It's not the same. Like, and it's very important because a lot of people merge the two roles, especially in Bootstrap. Like they are the founder and the CEO, but it's not the same, right? One is actually running the business and taking
Yeah.
decision. The other one is owning the business, and that's very different roles. Like the owning stuff is often, bless you, my friend, the owning stuff is, the sort of like VC role where you actually just get a share of a business. And the other one is actually just dealing with all the crap that comes around, having the business and making it run. So really fantastic point. The other thing I would say is the why is super important, as Amar said, because, as soon as there is a bump on the road or something that is like, mildly annoying or like sometimes very stressful, sometimes very annoying, uh, then you're gonna say like, why on earth am I doing this thing, right? And then you're going to do something. It's like, 5 years or whatever before you start getting some traction. That's a long time. You better make sure you know why you're doing it, right? That could be freedom, that could be money, that could be changing the world, that could be whatever you actually want, or solving like a very important problem. And because you're gonna go through a lot of shit. And yeah, maybe we could talk also about our biggest crappy moments or what we don't like doing, but I do things I don't
Yeah.
like on a regular basis. And I think it's a good balance for the things, I really enjoy and value. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like everything else in life, being an entrepreneur, like choosing the entrepreneur path is a choice, and it's a choice just between that and whatever other opportunities you have in front of you, whether that's, you know, a high paying tech job, or whether it's a service job, or whatever like it might be. Maybe it's being a student or whatever. So yeah, that's definitely yeah, important to consider. But yeah, I would say that it's funny because I really do think everyone should start a company, even if it's just so you realize that like it's not as easy as you think, right? So that like you're like
yeah.
a better employee, right? That you're like a better employee down the road. That I think that's really, really actually important. But what I can say is like the people that tend to not stick with it are going to be the ones who, if you like essentially only want to be an entrepreneur because of like, I don't want to say kind of like the perks, but like you mentioned that like freedom,
the
there's a difference between
status the
freedom and because
status and the
yeah,
fame,
yeah,
the coolness of being a
exactly,
founder.
exactly.
I'm a founder. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I think that yeah, not in the Bay Area, not in the Bay Area. In the Bay Area, everyone's a founder.
true.
But but yeah, you're right. It is kind of like the people that are doing it for the status tend to be the ones that are not going to stick with it as long. They're going to run into, honestly, they're going to run into the same number of challenges as everyone else, but how they approach those challenges is completely different, like what you were alluding to. So yeah, it's interesting, but I'm just trying to figure out in my head of like what's the there's like a fine line between wanting to be an entrepreneur because of like the status, or because of like, yeah, like the kind of like the perceived lifestyle and everything. But like at the same time, for me, it's, I did it for the freedom, and like those two very closely like relate, but I don't know, it's different. I'm not really
No,
sure
freedom
how.
is for
Maybe it's
yourself.
not.
Status is, how people are perceiving you and what people think of you. And
That's
in
a good
fact,
point.
if you're really worrying too much about what people think of you, you're just going to do like what everyone else is doing, which means it's going to be super hard
Yeah.
for you to really be a founder, unless you're in the Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, no, I was living in Thailand. I just, uprooted my life and moved to Thailand when I was making like $1,000 a month, right? Like if I was doing it for status
Yeah.
and for like for fame, I would have quit a long time ago, right? But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
now
you're
I'm
gonna say like,
famous.
okay,
No,
that's
that's
fine.
not that,
Well, in fact, I
that's
mean, the
not.
people who are just doing it for fame, unless they're lucky, you find them, in entrepreneur workshop and stuff like that. Like the people who like to say they got a company, but they're not really making any money. They're like operating in submarine. It's like, oh, it's a secret project, or it's like, oh, we're still in development phase, or whatever. But they're actually not making any
Oh
money,
yeah.
And that's the one who actually do
Stealth
it like,
mode.
yeah,
Yeah.
for the status, like of like being able to say I'm a founder or like
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneur kind of thing. One thing I really love what that you said is that employees should start a company, and I think it's an education
Mhm.
thing. It's very important to be able to see both sides of the fence. Both have their advantages and disadvantages, and I think it will make you definitely a much better employee if you already try to build a business yourself.
Mhm.
Like I'm going through all my past
Yeah.
experience of like working in 13 different companies, and I can now very clearly see why some stuff worked and why some stuff didn't work at all. And this is like just
Yeah.
broadening your horizon, and then like it's basically saying like, holy hell, my glasses were actually wrong, let me put the other one. And it's like you see things like in
Mhm.
3D, whereas an employee you don't necessarily, you only see one side, and that's very hard to
Yeah.
grasp the full picture. I think that's why you got unions that are always like, trying to get higher salaries and stuff like that. And from the point of, and I
Mhm.
mean, it's great that they're here in the sense that they managed to obtain a lot of benefits that would not have been necessarily given. But I guarantee you that instead of actually going into unionized, if everyone actually started to create their own business, they'd be way better suited with better tools to understand how to negotiate with the other side,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's what is lacking a little bit. Now, my question to you, and I know we're kind of like diverging a little bit, is like, do you think that people who only started a company and never actually worked also have this sort of like 2D view of what's happening, like missing one critical side? Because you've been an employee too, right?
Yeah, I've been an employee too. Yeah, I'm not sure. I've seen it go like both ways. Is some people are, they never work as employees and they're just completely out of touch with like, their employees' lives and like what that's like and everything. And then I've seen some people that seem to adapt to it like very, very well. I think that's less of a problem though, right? Because I think that unless like both of your parents were entrepreneurs, that like, even if you've never like worked somewhere, you probably have an idea of like what kind of like the day-to-day grind is kind of like and all of that stuff. um
Hey,
so
that's
I
a
think
fair
that's
point.
less of a problem than employees that haven't been
And I
entrepreneurs.
think
Yeah.
you're saying a fair point because, again, we're probably mixing the founder and the CEO, or like, the one in the business doing the work
Hmm.
and the one owning the business. If you were, I guess, if you were only owning the business like an aristocratic type of family,
Yeah.
that never actually did the work themselves, then they will be probably totally
Hmm.
disconnected from the actual reality of, the grind and working on things. So
Hmm.
that's a fair
Yeah.
point. That's a fair point. Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's a reason why I think that it's very difficult for some people to create a company. Don't necessarily think in a bad way. It's like you're mentioning about your why needs to be important, probably not related to how people are perceiving you, which is status and fame. Um, and where did I want to go with that? Let me think. I lost my train of thoughts. I wanted to add something else. Not everyone should create a company. And then know why. I don't know. I lost it. I'll be coming back. It's, stay tuned. Next week, you're going to get the answer. I lost it.
It's gonna
Anyway.
be like 6 or 7 episodes from now.
Yeah. Like, oh, you remember this episode? Like, yeah. No, damn it. It's okay. Just throw something. It's going to come back.
Yeah.
So do you see people who should
come
not
back for
go
sure.
ahead and then go for that, founder? Oh, there you go. If you're wise about like financially, financial stuff, they are bad. They are not necessarily. It's not a bad way to create a company, and I think it's over glorified. But honestly, there are some other ways to become, financially wealthy. Of course, you need to sort of own things, but that could go, there is lots of vectors you could go, like someone let's say just the crypto space. It may be a once in a lifetime type of opportunity and so on, but definitely if you had put all your or part of your salary consistently in crypto just over last year, then you'll be already like multimillionaire already, right? So there are some vectors to get you rich, some faster than others. Just know that founder is, it's a long time, it's a long game, and it has good odds. I believe it had good odds if you stick to it for quite some time and you have your real focus towards producing value and helping your end users. Then I think you can get this. But I think definitely better chances than playing lotto, but probably less chances than actually either investing or going through different medium. What do you think?
I think it depends a lot on the level of wealth. I think that really when you're talking about entrepreneurship, I think that it's the level of wealth, but also it's just important to take into account that, all three of our listeners could be distributed across the globe, Jeremy, in three very like wildly different countries.
Sure.
So
No, of course.
if you know if it very much depends on on where like you actually are in the world, but more and more like the internet is sort of
Sure.
opening up like borders, and so it's possible for you to earn money from anywhere in the world. But yeah, like I think it depends on the level of wealth. I think that if you were trying to, let's say, be worth, let's say, 20 or 30 million dollars in like today's like money, that's going to be difficult to achieve by like working a decently like typical job and just like investing your money, right? So if you're looking to be a millionaire today, then I think there's much safer routes. If you're looking for like a bigger outcome than that, then I think being an entrepreneur is probably one of the best ways, unless you catch like a wave like crypto or something like that, which like you should try to do, but you can't really count on, I would say, right?
Yeah. Okay. There's lots of things to unpack. First of all, is that no matter where you are in the world, there are some level at which you're better off, right?
Agreed.
So you don't need to have 1 million if you're been born and raised in Vietnam, for example. Maybe 200,000 will already be like a life-changing thing. And so, but the other part that you're saying, very true, is that the internet helps you to actually be globalized. So you could potentially, command the salary of Silicon Valley while living in Thailand, right? That's possible, has been seen. The other thing is you can participate to a startup. So you don't actually take you take a part of risk, of course, but you also have like a salary. So you have a salary plus options or plus shares, on top of it. So that's also another road. If you actually are one of the few first employees in a company that plans to go IPO and that has like VC funding, there is potentially a good chance of getting like a good payout, in the end. Of course, it may not work, but like everything, right? Not all founders are actually making money. There are still founders that are struggling and lots that are actually, stopping and then doing consultancy or stuff like that. Right. So I guess there's multiple ways, but one thing that is for sure is like it's the mechanism in order to become wealthy are facilitated with time. Like the more longer horizon you have and
Mm.
more well established and plan you have, that could be through real estate investment, that could be through, like I mentioned, working in some other places, or through investments, or different vectors or financial, instruments, then you're going to have a higher chances of, of achieving it. So sometimes wealth is built over a full generation, right? And that could
Yeah.
be then the grandparent gives the house to the next kids, and the kids,
Hmm.
those sort of things. So every case is very different. Saying that you have to be a founder, not always true, but it is one of the glorified path at the moment, and I think one
Yeah,
that
at the
could very
moment.
well work, because it has better odds than playing the lottery, for example. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it comes with a lot of sacrifices. Like one of the things that I hear very often, that's one of the things that gets under my skin,
Hmm.
because um, it's the sort of agreed, um, narrative, right? It's the
Yeah.
narrative that goes at the moment, which is I'm working for my family. And
Okay.
I call BS on that. It's like if you say like I'm sacrificing all my weekends, my evening, my relationship with my kids and wife because of them, I think you're just delusional. And I think that's
Mm.
something that's a big strong narrative currently in the US that I hear, where in fact no, your kids probably want more time with you, and then you could just be an employee and then have a decent salary, and then spend more time with your kids, but that's not as catchy. So I think if people are more honest with themselves, they do it for a reason. Maybe they're competitive, maybe they want to win, maybe they don't satisfy with just. And very often, I'm not sure if I told that with you or not, but very often the sort of like male approach to financial freedom is to go 120% on just one vector, like whether it's their company or their work or whatever. They
Mm.
go 120, ignoring all the other factors, just because they are not satisfied with just being at 80% of all the other things. Like people will prefer to be 120% on building their startup, ignoring sacrificing their family life and every other things,
Yeah.
like activity with friends, all the other thing that comes around, rather than just being like mediocre or like not as successful, but just being at the 80% success, but on multiple vectors. 80% success in your marriage, 80% success with your kids,
Yeah.
80% success with your thing. And I think that's the
Yeah.
strong narrative that goes at the moment, which is detrimental, because if you succeed it, then that's great, but you may also have sacrifices and burn a lot of bridges. If you think 7 years, so in order to work, maybe 10 years in order to reach your goals, then if you
Mm.
started and your kids are like 15, then they're 15 by 5 years old, and they're 15 by the end you're sort of like made it,
Mm.
and it's too late anyway, because your kids won't spend more time with you. It's like, yeah, daddy, I'm spending time with my friends. That's the sort of like
Yeah. Yeah.
narrative I'm seeing. And so that could be detrimental as well to start a company like that,
Yeah.
because it's very consuming and sucking.
And that's something, yeah, I think that might be a good topic for another like podcast episode, because I think what you just described is very much the way that I went about like building ZenMaid. Is, I mean, you
Guilty
mentioned
too,
this
huh?
like on the
Honestly.
previous like episodes. Yeah. Yeah, right. Is that we've both done it actually in like a relatively like low stress way. I think actually you might have asked me this on Twitter, and I've had other people that have asked me this, of like, don't you think that you could have like been successful with ZenMaid faster if you'd like stayed in the US, or if you'd done like X, Y, and Z or whatever? And my response to that has always been like, yeah, but I probably would have quit, right? Because like I didn't want to be pushing like that hard, and I was okay taking it slower. And like if that meant, like actually I've never really thought about it this way. Like Jeremy, you've said a couple of times in our conversations that like we haven't recorded, that like you wanted to win in your way. That's actually very much how I've been with my lifestyle. Is I was like, no, like this is like how I want to live my life. This is how I want like, work to fit into my life. And like I obviously have to make sacrifices. I have to take calls in the middle of the night, but there's some things that it doesn't get in the way of. And like I was very particular about that. Yeah, I don't know. Just an interesting thing that just popped in my head from what you're saying.
And that's a great point. At some point, I could have accepted, founding. I was on the, I was being proposed, hey, we give you some money and then you grow this thing, a lot and so on. And I was like, Yeah, but I don't want to go 120% on quick mail. I
Yeah.
still value my time with my kids as they are growing and so on. And I wasn't ready to make the sacrifice. Of course, I was very appealing because I like to win. I'm very competitive and so on. But at the same time, I wasn't lying to myself. I think being honest with yourself is probably a very important thing.
Hmm.
Knowing really the real needs that you have behind actually doing things, super important. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe mindset is a good cast to have at some
Yeah.
point. But if you're very honest with yourself, you realize that sometimes the narrative that that you say is not necessarily aligned with actually the real action that you do. And so you have to sort of like do a little bit of reflection and then say, are you okay and are you comfortable with the consequences of
Yeah.
your actions versus doing the Hollywood narrative and and then what everyone's just like thinking or broadcasting around you.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
I would have done full speed, taking the millions and then going and building the company. That was not what I wanted. I wasn't ready to sacrifice everything else. I'm glad I
Yeah.
didn't do it, by the way.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Super happy.
Okay. Cool. Um,
So,
okay.
should everyone create a company, Emma?
Everyone should consider. Everyone should consider it. I think that, yeah, not it's definitely not for everyone, but even just starting a company, that doesn't mean, if you're not made to start a company and you start a company, you're probably not going to succeed, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So, like, 100%. Um,
I do have some other points I would say about this
yeah, go
because I've
for it.
been arguing very strongly again, for one side, but there is the other side
Hmm.
as well. And I think it's easier than what people think. Sometimes it's not necessarily funnier, but it could be easier than what people think, in a sense that people will take 4 years education about
Hmm.
learning how to code, for example. That
Yeah.
4 years could be transformed in trying to actually um, generate value, which would be maybe
Mm,
through other people, which is maybe you
yeah.
hire someone who's done this 4 years education to actually build up something for you because you see a need in the market. So people make it
Yeah.
way more too complicated instead of just creating the value. If I create the value, then I can take a piece of it. That's just as simple as that. But people actually come from, it's a storefront effect. Like you come, in a merchant in a merchant street, you see a
Yeah.
you see a shop and you say, oh, that's a business, but it's not. It's just a front store, right? And so people try to
Mm,
replicate the front store, but not actually creating the value. You go in this shop, maybe it's a restaurant, because you're hungry, so you satisfy the
yeah.
hunger. You're not satisfying the beautiful look and design of things, right? And people actually
Yeah.
supposed to focus time on that instead of, well, why don't you focus on creating something that sustain, produce good food that is sustained,
Hmm.
sustaining people, instead of actually, you know spending lots of attention on logo color or the
Yeah.
name of
Yeah.
the restaurant. No one cares. And I think that's this sort of like reframing and mindset. And when people have that, like, it's not that hard to get money. Like, I can propose something you want and I ask money in exchange. That's just as simple as that. But people make it more complicated. So I think that's point
Yeah.
one. It's easier than you think. The second thing is, again, you don't necessarily have to do it yourself. You can just identify things and being the sort of like middleman, potentially producing value, and then just getting a cut of that. And um, and I'm thinking also of, it doesn't have to be a unicorn business. It could be a simple
Yeah.
one. And lots of people are thinking like, oh, the market's too small, or like, oh, I'm not going to do that. It's like, it's not big enough
Yeah.
for me. I was like, at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be big. Um, anyway.
Yeah. I heard about a company today that this guy used to work with gene companies with like a gene pressing machine or something, and
Nice.
one of his developer friends came to him and was like, yo, I think we can build something that would, like, cut down like paying like workers, 10 or $20,000 a month, to like just like it being done pretty much like automatically, or like something along those lines. And like apparently they started like a niche software for like gene printing businesses, like so
You know,
niche. I love it.
well, I got another awesome business I heard. It's like for McDonald's. Apparently, their ice cream machine is
Yeah.
always broken, and the code they give is very cryptic code, so no one can actually understand what it is. So the only thing they have to do is call the guy, and then
Yep.
that company, that McDonald's allow only one company to produce, ice cream machines, and that company, 25% of their revenue comes from services. So of course they have a massive incentive not to make it easier, on ice cream machine
Yeah.
owners to actually, understand how to actually fix it. So there was like a company that created like a small app, a small thing that actually just automatically tell you like, oh, it's because you put too much ice cream, or it's like, those sort of things like that. So they managed to have like non-broken stuff. And it's
Yeah.
like you can find like a small problem, and suddenly, you can make
Yeah.
it work. And one last
Definitely.
thing I would say, I think you should not create a business if you're a people pleaser. And that means if you're not willing to be able to stand out and say, no, sorry, we're going to do it this way. Because very often what people do when they move to employee to being founder is they try to replicate the comfortable structure of other people taking decisions. And I think as a founder, this is something you have to learn as well, is the ability to say, to take the input, but make your own decision as to, well, this is what we're going to do, or this is the direction we're going to get. I think that's probably one of the pitfalls as well for when I would say you should not create a company if you're not comfortable being able to take decisions that will potentially go against what people think or want, which may be coming back to fame to some extent. I don't know.
Yeah. The only thing that I would caution there, that I feel like I grew into a lot of these things, and I feel some things came to me like naturally, and so like I just want to kind of remind folks that it's more just that realize that you're going to be put into situations like that, and you're going to have to make hard decisions if you want to be a successful entrepreneur. So it's okay if you don't identify like that, like as like, as of like right now, but realize that if you start a company, if you're a bit more of like of a people pleaser, right, like eventually that is going to cause severe
More
trouble
problems.
in the company, right? And so yeah, that's all that I would really say there. But generally I agree. I think that that's a muscle that you've got to really like I've definitely gotten better at standing my ground, because sometimes I'm good at standing my ground, but it's very like situational, right? And now it's like, when I believe in something, when I think that we're making a mistake, like I will fight for it, and like I wasn't like that the first couple of years when we started the company. So
No, it's a great point. That could be learned, definitely. Like most of it, actually.
yeah,
But
like
it could
most
be
of it.
something people don't like, or it's like they see it, oh, it's not in my nature, or stuff like that. So
Yeah.
they will have a harder time for sure.
Yeah.
All right. I think you got a meeting with your team, and it's lunch for me. So I think we stop it here.
Yeah, sounds good. Awesome, awesome chatting, awesome conversations as always, and we'll do it again next week.
Yeah. What should people do if they want to know more of us?
They should smash the subscribe button, the like button, the follow button. Yeah, destroy it. Yeah. All that stuff. Like, think about your favorite YouTuber that's not me or Jeremy, and and think about what they would say at the end of their videos.
That's right.
Like, subscribe, hit the bell, so to make sure that you get notifications for when we go live. And don't forget to use the coupon code Jeremy and Amar 215 for 215% off of hugs everywhere. I don't know.
Free hugs for whoever enter the coupon. Oh, yeah, that works for me. We're gonna.
But if anyone,
Amar start saying more things.
Oh, I was about to keep going. Like, if any one of our 3 listeners wants to connect with the other 2 listeners on the podcast, we've got sponsorships available. Get connected with all 2 other people.
All right, I'm not sure about that. All right, it's time to stop. Thank you everyone for watching, and I see you next week. Bye, Amar.
All right, see ya.